So this is going to be part 2 of the sermon on concerning hypocrisy. If we go on to where it says in Matthew 9, pardon of the tax collector. As Jesus went on from there, he saw a man named Matthew sitting at the tax collector's booth. "Follow me," he told him, and Matthew got up and followed him. So Jesus asked Matthew to follow him. He told him, and Matthew got up and followed him. While Jesus was having dinner at Matthew's house, many tax collectors and sinners came and ate with him, and his disciples. In verse 11 it goes on, when the Pharisees saw this, they asked the disciples, "Why does the teacher eat with the tax collectors and the sinners?" This is what I was saying to you about in the first part of this, part 1. Jesus talks about the yeast of the Pharisees. To be on your guard against the yeast of the Pharisees, which is hypocrisy. So what is Jesus talking about, the yeast of the Pharisees? And this is the look at the yeast of the Pharisees, referring to the meaning of hypocrisy. Not having a real conviction, pretending, having a kind of lie. As a saying about the Pharisees, what are the Pharisees? The Pharisees, as I was saying, can be hypocritical, can be of hypocrisy because they were actually questioning Jesus at the time. They're actually questioning Jesus at the time, but if we look through the scriptures, as it says, it was the Pharisees that brought Jesus to Pontius Pilate. It was the Pharisees that was being hypocritical of Jesus, and they're always out to somewhat question and be of hypocrisy about what Jesus was doing. On the hearing, and then in verse 12 of Matthew 9, or verse 12, it says, on the hearing this, Jesus said, it is not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick. But go and learn what this means. I desire mercy, not sacrifice, for I have not come to call the righteousness, but I've come to call the sinner. I have not come to call the righteousness, but the sinner. So church, what I'm talking about tonight is, what is your conviction? Are you pretending? But God sees all. And as we go back to where we were before in Luke 12, verses 2 to 3, it actually goes on to say that there is nothing concealed, what is disclosed or hidden, that will not made to known. What you have said in dark will be heard in the daylight, and what you have whispered in the ear of the inner rooms will be proclaimed from the roofs. So at the end of the day, actually, God hears everything you say. If you think you can whisper it into someone's ear, or talk in the dark, or talk to someone hiding, remember, God hears everything. And God also hears everything. You know, we look at the fact that Jesus Christ is the Son of God, and the Son of God also hears everything. And Jesus hears everything as well. And as it says in Matthew 9 verses 12, on hearing this, Jesus heard the Pharisees asking this question, why does your teacher eat with the tax collectors and the sinners? As he says, on hearing this, Jesus said, it is not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick. But go and learn from what this means. I desire mercy, not sacrifice. See, he says that he desires mercy, not sacrifice. You know, as Christians, we tend to get this mixed up, that we have to make sacrifices. It's not a matter of making sacrifices. Well, in a sense, it is a matter of making sacrifices, but also it's a matter of showing mercy. And with showing mercy, it also brings the understanding of how to actually make sacrifices. If we can show mercy and grace, and we can also show that we are not leading a hypocrisy of life. And then he goes on to say in Matthew 9 verses 12, for I have not come to call for the righteousness, but I have come for the sinners. He has not come to call the righteousness, but he has come to call the sinners. He's come to call the sinners. As Jesus Christ said, he comes to call the sinners. So, if we go on in what I'm saying, so if we see what Jesus is saying in Matthew 7, the correlation that with hypocrisy is, if we go to Matthew 7, it says here in Matthew 7, and this is just a correlation that I bring to the table. In relations to judging in Matthew 7, do not judge or you will be judged. For the same way you judge others, you will be judged with the measures that you use. It will be measured to you. Why do you look at the speck of the sawdust in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank in your own eye? How can you say to your brother or your sister, but in this case it says in the scripture, how can you say to your brother or sister, let me take the speck out of your eye, when all the time there is a plank in your own eye? You're a hypocrite. First take the plank out of your own eye, then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye. This is about having a true conviction. We can't have a true conviction if we haven't taken the splinter out of our own eyes. Take the plank out of your own eyes, as Jesus is saying there, and then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye. We can't clearly see the plank in our brother's eyes, and we somewhat become hypocrisy and hypocritical because we think we are right. But if we only stood back and said, Jesus, what do you want us to do? Give us the opening, give us a sign. And usually as a rule, we don't like the fact that we have to take the plank out of our own eye. We're all good at judging other people. We're all good at having this hypocrisy of saying, hey, you're wrong and you have to confess your sins. But what about yourself? Are you actually addressing and looking at yourself? So as I was saying, the correlation here is with hypocrisy is that if we have the true conviction and not living a lie, then we're able to not judge, and we're able to judge less, and we're able to have more of an understanding and more grace and more mercy. In the case of Matthew 9 verses 11, the Pharisees asked a question. Jesus was eating with the sinners. We see the Pharisees have not looked at the speck in their own eye, so they look at the situation with hypocritical, where in turn Jesus in Matthew 9 verses 9 and 12 says. So we go back to Matthew 9 in verses 12. It says the same thing here. On hearing this, Jesus said, it is not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick. But go and learn what this means. I desire mercy. Jesus says he desires mercy, not sacrifice. And this is where we do understand, as if we are leading as Christians, that Jesus says he desires mercy, not sacrifice. For I have not come to call the righteousness, but he has come but the sinners. So he's come to call the sinners. He hasn't come to call the righteousness. And if you look at the meaning here, but we go on to learn of what it means about the desire to show mercy. I'll leave it here at part 2, and I will go on to part 3 in just a minute.